So this is going to be a different type of video of ReZero, and the reason for that, as you can see by the title, I want to talk about Hector, the Devil of Melancholy. And the reason why I want to dedicate a video discussing this said character is because I saw things that I actually had no idea about. As someone that is, a novel reader, that is up to date with the web novel, like I am up to date, I am reading Arc 7 of ReZero, I had no idea how similar Roswaal and Hector was as characters until this episode aired today. And I have seen Hector's design in the past, but it never clicked with me. Like, I briefly looked at Hector's design, and I moved on because there was just so much going on with Arc 4. I mean, let's be honest, there has been a lot that's happened within Arc 4, and I think anyone that's just, right now, just as anime only can agree with that. So, Hector's design it slipped my mind. It just straight up slipped my mind, and I carried on with everything else that was going on. And this episode just made everything kind of start to click together, and I'm just like, wait, whoa, what? Like, Hector's design legitimately looks exactly like present-day Roswaal. Like, I want to put the character designs literally side by side. You could literally see for yourself what I'm talking about, and you're not going to be able to deny just how similar they are. Like, it's almost exactly identical. There is some discrepancies between the two, but it's pretty much the same. Like, you see the entire way the different colors of each side of the outfit is very similar to each other. You just see the overall, like, the back cape that has, like, the little, like, points sticking out. Roswaal's and Hector's is the exact same. You see the overall way the facial structure is the same. When you just look at everything with the outfit to the little, ties in the middle of the suit keeping it together, everything looks the same. You have the little handkerchief, like the, the little, like, yellowish thing. I don't know what that's exactly called, but hanging down around his neck. You basically see so many different things that are the exact same between the two characters. And diving in a little bit deeper after watching this episode, there's something else you can notice with audio cues that I did not catch while reading this in the web novel. And that is the fact that Roswaal stretches sentences just like Hector did. That is something I want to point out. Watch that scene again with Hector. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch his scene and you will see there's multiple times while he's talking to Roswaal and even Echidna, he stretches out his final words. Very similar to how we know our Roswaal is throughout the story. How he's always like, so desu ne, he just like stretches it. Like, basically, Hector does the exact same thing. And in that point of this episode, we see like a young Roswaal that doesn't do that. He does not have that speech pattern, that little tick to where he stretches his words. He is a very different speaker. Like, he sounds obviously the same, but he's a different speaker. His words don't stretch like he does in the present day timeline. So when you see that, it just makes everything start to like, well, what is happening here? Is our Roswaal really Roswaal, or is he some form of embodiment of Hector itself? And that's something I want to dive into because I don't have the answer. This is actually me just straight up theory crafting. So do not worry. I am with you, anime onlys. I just discovered this similarity today. So let's dive into it. Let's pitch some ideas out there. Let me throw out some ideas, and if you have any ideas, pitch them back to me through the comments. So I don't know how common knowledge this is with just the similarities between the characters. It might be very common. Maybe I've been living under a rock for a very long time and I had no idea. Who knows? But all I'm trying to say though is now looking at it, if we're really going by the fact that these designs are similar, there's obviously a message that the writer is trying to convey to us. The audience that is reading the story or watching the story, there's obviously something being implied here that Roswaal took on the very character design of Hector, the one that brutally beat him down and caused so many problems in the 400 years later for Roswaal and everybody, because he's the one that effectively caused Sanctuary to get created like it did. He's the one that probably caused Echidna to be trapped in her little citadel and giving out these trials. What's happened with Ruzu, with, Beatrice, all these little things that's probably happened is kind of thanks to Hector. So it makes you wonder, why would Roswaal want to dress up as someone that has caused so much hell in his life. Because we know for a fact by the way Roswaal presents himself, the way he constantly talks, especially within the latest episode, he is only focused on one thing. He's only focused on his love for Echidna, and that's it. That's all he cares about. He wants her again. That's it. To be fair, though, the kiss he received from the one he loves was definitely quite enchanting for his first time. You could see that it's easy to tell why he would want to continue to fight for that same woman for over 400 years. Everything else, he will sacrifice everything to obtain his one goal, and this is obviously something he's been trying to get, Subaru to do for a very long time. That was the whole point of why Subaru is here now. It's just the whole struggle, the bet between the characters. We know that. But now it makes me wonder, why? Why would Roswaal do that? Why would he wear this? We gotta look at some of his key features that we know up to this point. We know he wears the clown makeup as war paint. When he's serious and he feels like he cannot lose, he puts that clown makeup on to really say, I am going to win this. And he's always had this makeup on ever since he was introduced. And there's been occasional few times to where he does not have it on. We've seen quite a few conversations between Subaru and Roswaal throughout Season 2 to where he doesn't have the makeup on and he shows this very sad, melancholy look. You get where I'm getting at. And basically, you see how soon as he puts on the makeup, his entire demeanor changes. He gets very uplifted, happy, like he has, like some energy in his step. He's ready to achieve great things. That's how Roswaal acts. But as soon as the makeup's off, he acts all depressed. He acts like, he acts very indifferent to everything around him. And his overall demeanor is very reminiscent of the devil of melancholy, Hector. Now, let's think about this. We know that there is incredible powers within the ReZero verse. We know about the Witch of Envy and how she has given Subaru return by death, allowing Subaru to literally go against the very norms of reality of death itself to start back at our earlier checkpoint. It's ridiculous in of itself, that power alone. But there's other powers that are just as insane. You have, for instance, invisible hands, like the unseen hand that is able to straight up pierce people and grab things from great distances. You have some mysterious power of Regulus that is able to block all damage from what we saw in the previous episodes. You have Pandora that's able to speak and narrate certain sentences and alter reality itself. You have individuals like, the other witches. You have Minerva that is able to punch people so hard that she's able to heal them. You have Gluttony that created the Maw Beast, the Great Three Maw Beasts, the White Rabbit, the Black Serpent, and the White Whale. So we know that there's a lot of crazy powers within the ReZero universe. This isn't something left field. So when we take that all into consideration and we throw in the fact that this is someone called the Devil of Melancholy, or best known as Warlock, could be a translation thing that they didn't do. He is known as a warlock. And this isn't a spoiler, because literally, when I was reading this in the web novel, the chapter that was adapted in this episode, he was called a warlock, which is a very big detail when you think about it, because when you think about a witch, the opposite of a witch is a warlock, which opens the whole doorway up for okay, so there is warlocks now. And if there is warlocks, how many of them are there? Is there a warlock for every representing sin? That's a question that pops up, but that's for another video another time. The point I'm trying to say, though, is that we know that these entities that are given titles of different sins or emotions are incredibly powerful. Sloth, envy, greed, lust. We have pride, wrath. We have seen the powers of these individual sins at work. And looking at melancholy, we need to assess what that actually is. It's kind of a lesser known sin, a lesser known thing that people might want to throw in with either, let's say, pride, or they might want to throw in with vanity. There's a lot of ways to kind of throw in melancholy. Melancholy, at its very core, is sadness and depression, or sadness or depression of the mind or spirit. That is what melancholy technically represents in its general form. And when you look at how Hector presents himself in the episode of ReZero today, he talks very sad. Just his overall demeanor, everything about him, he's a very depressing and sad individual. But then Roswaal comes back with a counter argument. It's like, look, I don't want you acting like this, saying you're all sad or whatever, when you're the very one that chose to live this very life. You're the one that chose to be in your position. You're not trying to leave it, which is very much similar to kind of what depression is. Sometimes there's easy answers to depression, sometimes there's not. There's different ways to get out of it. And in this case, Roswaal was pointing out that the man is purposely sitting in melancholy and not actually wanting to leave it. That's a big detail there. And so now that we know the fundamentals of what it means, we know that these sins and these emotions come with their own distinct powers. We know for a fact from watching the episode, he was able to just completely destroy Roswaal, and we know Roswaal is not weak by any means. Yes, this was a younger, naive version of 400 years ago, and the question still stands, how did, Roswaal survive that ordeal? How is he here in the present day with Subaru? That's questions and answers for later, but for the point right now, though, is that Roswaal, we know, is really strong. He is basically Merlin of this universe in terms of just what he's kind of capable of. And to see him just destroyed to such an extent really just goes to show how strong Hector actually is. But when we look at the actual fight, we don't really know what happened. We just see these blurs and Roswaal's on the ground on his back. He's getting crushed by some form of invisible force. And it instantly makes you want to think, okay, is it some version of Unseen Hand? Because we don't really know exactly how all these powers work. These different individual powers from the witches, the witch factors, we don't really know how it works entirely. And since this individual is technically a warlock, his power might work very different, since technically we know about witches factors, maybe he has like a warlock factor. We don't really know. That's the point I'm trying to say, is that now knowing these little details, what if he used some form of mysterious power to give Roswaal melancholy? Think about it. Once again, what I briefly said, melancholy is sadness or depression of the mind or spirit. And when you look at Roswaal's his actions throughout the entire story, it is technically of melancholy. Like, let me go deeper into Roswaal's overall demeanor. This episode, he makes it very, very fundamentally clear what he's fighting for, the weight he carries on his shoulders, and why he is not going to let any small setbacks stop him from achieving what he wants. For instance, he believes that everyone is weak. He truly believes that everyone has this negative side. He looks at the negative versions of every individual. He doesn't think people are strong, and he thinks because of how weak individuals are, they're only able to accomplish one thing. They can only focus on one thing and accomplish something, which kind of reflects on why he acts like he does. Basically, if you try to get greedy and stretch out your hands to do more things than one thing, you will lose everything, even the thing you hold dear to you. So Roswaal's like, look, instead of losing everything, I'd rather hold on to that one dear thing for everything I have and not let go of it. That's kind of what Roswaal is. So it's, in its own way, its own version of melancholy. He is only looking at the sadness or the negative versions of things, of feelings, strength, or weakness. He's only looking at the negativity of all of it. And it makes you wonder, did Hector do something to Roswaal? Did Hector mess with Roswaal's mind? Did Hector mess with his spirit? Whatever it may be, it does make you wonder, because we know that there is powers that can transcend time itself. Pandora, reverting her very death. Subaru, returned by death. So we know that there is ways to circumvent certain things. So it makes me wonder if Roswaal was afflicted by whatever Hector can do. We're just unaware of what it is. Which also brings up another question to throw in there. What if the reason why Echidna, the Witch of Greed, is like she is, why she's so disconnected, why she has no empathy for others, is because of her connection to Hector? It would all line up perfectly when you think about it. Because we know that they have a relationship. It's made very clear in this episode that Hector and Echidna knew each other for a while. And then somehow they're no longer together, whatever. We don't know if they were in a relationship or not. We don't even know if they're maybe family. We have no idea. The point, though, is that Echidna gets away from him, and she's hiding from him, running away from this individual. And we know that she lacks empathy. And when we look at this flashback, you could still see that Echidna lacks a lot of emotion. You could see it clearly, that with the visual representation of not showcasing her eyes throughout the entire flashback, it's kind of like it's telling the audience that Echidna isn't looking at anyone around her. Echidna isn't viewing people, she's just looking at her own objective, the one goal she is seeking, without really any emotion whatsoever. And so it makes you wonder, once again, it kind of makes you wonder if Hector did something to Echidna, which has kind of caused this entire situation of Sanctuary, this disconnect, and caused so much hell with all the characters, and why Roswaal acts the way he does. So yeah, I wanted to mention that. It's a really interesting detail with this episode, and I want to say, just in case you're all worried, this is not a spoiler. I am with you anime onlys right now. I had no idea about the design, the similarities. It really does make you question everything that you know about the characters we've seen so far connected to Sanctuary, especially with Hector's introduction. So we don't know much about this individual, but clearly he has caused some form of problems, most likely very similar to the problems that Pandora caused. Because it's pretty interesting when you think about that Pandora had such an effect on Amelia's backstory, and is potentially the main antagonist of this entire story, maybe even beyond Satala herself. And now we get introduced to Hector right after Pandora, this mysterious figure that has a mysterious power that we have never heard anything about, nobody really knows about, and this person obviously has a mysterious power that's very similar to what, Subaru's capable of, what others are capable of in the Witches cult. So it's just like, what has this person done? There is a correlation that the writer is trying to tell us right now with these two characters being introduced back to back. But I want to leave it at that. I think that this episode really does bring up a lot of questions, a lot of world building, a lot of lore. And I think I'm going to dive back into Arc 4 a little bit deeper and read more into this Hector stuff. I might make a more follow-up video later on this just because of how intrigued I am. Because I've always loved Roswaal as a character. He's always been one of my personal favorite characters since he was introduced. I've been finding out how much of a sack of crap he was, especially what he's done to Subaru. It made me love him even more as a character, because I was just like, holy crap, this man's determination for what he wants and what he did to Subaru, and he cares about Subaru. Like, he doesn't hate Subaru. So it's like, what would he do to his enemy? And that also brings the question, what would he do to his enemy? Since technically Hector theoretically would be his number one enemy. What does he want to do to Hector? But I will leave it at that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm sorry that this video is a little bit different. I really want to talk about that because that really caught my attention. I got very passionate about it. I needed to let those emotions outside of my chest because there's just so many things that make me wonder. And that's the joy of ReZero. Why I love the anime of ReZero is because you can notice things that you can't always notice within a novel without it being strictly said. That's a big detail as well, is that I don't think it was ever straight up just said that Hector looked like Roswaal. It was never said like that. So, that's the big difference here between an anime and a novel. But okay, you all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And, it helps me out a lot when you do that. And if you enjoy my content, just leave a comment down below as well. It also helps with the algorithm. But I love you guys. Be safe, stay healthy. Chibi out.